Welcome to the Dads of Football. I'm Jeremy. That's Josh. We are going in a different direction with this video. We're talking about the NFL draft, but we're talking wow moments. Now, wow could be anything. That could be good. That could be bad. You could look at a
Yeah.
team. You could look at an individual. We may have had very different takes on the term wow. I had a little bit of good and bad with that. So I'm going to talk about my three wow moments from the draft. Josh, if any of my three wows are the same as yours, feel free to interject. Let me bring up my list here. I did create a list. My first wow was the one that everybody had, which was Michael Penix being drafted
Yeah.
in the top 10 by Atlanta. That wowed me because neither of us assumed that Atlanta was going to be picking a quarterback. We assumed they were out of the quarterback mix because they had Kirk Cousins, and lo and
Yeah.
behold, they pick a quarterback. Um, again, not not a knock on Penix. Like, I think he's a starting quarterback and I would give him the shot. It's just, you
Right.
just paid $180 million for Kirk Cousins for 4 years. You got a guy that's 24 years old, or at least is turning 24 years old. You can't really sit him that long. He's the perfect guy to play right away. So did you guarantee $100 million as an insurance policy? Is that what they did? Is
Sure
that what
seems
Kirk
like it.
Cousins is? An insurance? Because
Yep.
you're not going to keep Michael Penix on the bench for 2 years, 1 year maybe. Next year, you expect him to play.
Right.
So that had
Yeah.
everyone scratching their head. Go in there.
No, I was just gonna say I again, and you and I talked about this already, but it just trade back. You could have gotten him later. I still think the Vikings take JJ McCarthy. I still think it's possible the Broncos take Bo Nix. I
Mm-hmm.
think some of those things were predetermined. Um, it just you paid all that money for Kirk, Cole's Kirk, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Does not make a whole lot of sense. So
No, so that one got me. Again, I like the player. I just didn't understand it. Which is again an easy one. I'm going with another. All three of mine are easy. They're basically the same things that the
yeah.
talking heads talked about because I was surprised by them too. The next one, I'm just gonna go Brock Bowers to the Raiders. Even though Raiders, I didn't have them on my worst draft list that we had previously. I didn't think they had a great draft, and I think taking Bowers after you took Michael Mayer the year
Right.
before just made absolutely no sense. So if you're talking about just like the worst decision making, even more
Right.
so than Atlanta, I give it to the Raiders. And it just shows me that as an institution, that the Las Vegas Raiders haven't really learned anything. Um, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I the Raiders to me are like the White Sox in baseball. They're just the ownership group. They're just clueless. They never know what they want. It's always changing, shinier new toys. Now I see things all day to day, tweets about the Raiders need Tom Brady. It's just pure nonsense.
And correction, I did have them on my worst list. Actually, now that I go back and look at it,
Yeah.
I did have them on there. Again, they had two picks that I was cool with. The rest of them I wasn't
Right.
cool with. Again, fifth and sixth pick. I like who they took there, but they're fifth and sixth picks. But yeah, I just Brock Bowers could. I mean, really, you're gonna run two tight end sets that often with Gardner Minshew?
Yeah.
Who
Aiden
I'll
O'Connell,
say this.
Gardner Minshew.
I think Aiden McConnell's going to beat out Gardner Minshew at some point in the season. I'm just going to put that out there
Yes.
too. But talk about a
Agreed.
team that needed a true number one quarterback. But that's neither here
Yeah.
nor there. I had them on there. And then last but not least, the reason why I'm wearing my Iowa shirt today, the Bears taking a punter in the fourth round. My guy, Tory Taylor, the Aussie. You know what? If you would tell me that a team was taking a punter in the fourth round, I'd call you crazy. How could they do that? He's the worst pick. Being a Hawkeye guy that's watched every single game that Tory Taylor's ever played, I get it. And maybe I'm one
Yeah.
of the few, but here's the thing. If you ask any Iowa fan, they get it. Like, he saved games for us because we had zero offense. I mean, Deacon Hill in the transfer portal, by the way, uh, was our starting quarterback, threw for 48% completion rating. 48%. They're going to love him at Western Illinois University. But it's kind of crazy to think about how Tory Taylor turned the field and gave the defense a chance to make plays by saving touchdowns, by putting teams so far back. He was a game changer for the Hawkeyes.
Yep.
So the fact he's one of those punters that's just not your average punter. He's a guy that has the placement, that has the touch, that has the backspin. I love Tory Taylor, and they knew that they weren't going to get another shot to get him, and apparently it was a big enough need that they said, "Hey, we want the best punter in the last 10 to 15 years. Let's go out and get him because he can change the field for us." That wowed me that they had the guts to do that. So kudos to the Bears. I love that pick.
I did. I love the pick. My brother sent me a text about how, let's just say, how unhappy he was. And I said, look, man, the guy has might as well be called tripod. He's got 2 legs and then a massive kicking leg. So he's phenomenal. And at that point, that was potentially the Bears' last pick, and obviously they traded and made some moves later, but I'm with you 100%. So I'm going to use that to transition a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm going to take a little bit of a different direction. So my wows are going to be tied to the football end of it, but sort of response-based stuff. Little surprise, Brendan Rice didn't get picked until the 225th pick. Probably more so because he looks like a raw star. He's 6'2". He's got a big frame. He's clearly working on finer points of playing the game, beating press coverage, getting open, eventually versus now NFL corners. But he has the size and speed, the athleticism, the hand-eye coordination, and the genetics. It just surprised me a little bit that he didn't go till later. But that's not really my wow. So following Twitter and following things that were coming out about Brendan Rice not getting picked, I was shocked at a couple of things that I heard. One, everyone complaining that Jerry Rice deserves more than that, and how could they make his son wait that long, and that he actually even made that comment to people. That might all be hearsay. That may not be true. However, I just want to go on the record to say something. I don't give a shit who your dad is. I don't care who you think and what you think you deserve because of them. He was a raw product no matter what. You could actually see it at Caleb Williams's pro day, and he's good. Look, Jerry Rice is one of the hardest workers in the history of the NFL, without a doubt. His workouts were legendary, just like Walter Payton's were. Amazing stuff, right? But just hearing Twitter and the vitriol that was going out there, and Jerry Rice is owed more. Yeah, Jerry Rice's son got a free education at USC, partially because of who his father was. He is going to be drafted, and there are probably a lot of players that are similar athleticism throughout the college landscape. He's getting drafted or got drafted by the Chargers because of what his last name was. So there's like a part of me that's like, wow, really? This is where we're at now. His dad's Jerry Rice, so you should have picked him in the second round. Now,
did you see the tweet from his brother?
And that's go ahead, because that's where I was going to finish.
I mean, I saw the tweet from his brother, and I can't remember what it was because I who cares. But yeah, his brother, basically making it this big deal that like he couldn't believe that he had to wait this long. And I get it. His brother was making the point that he's better than this, and I'm saying to myself, well, no, he's not. Based on what we saw, he's not better than that. That's about what I expected him to be. He's another good project. He's a guy that has some talent, but are we going to all of a sudden unlock it? I mean, statistically, you saw a big drop off from Caleb Williams. And I hate to say it, his brother was part of the receiving crew that contributed to that.
Yes. Again, I know it's a little bit of a different wow. I was surprised he lasted that long. But it just was the response to it on Twitter and the brother saying that Jerry's owed more and the Niners should have picked him. And although, I mean, they picked Pearsall. So whatever.
Well, and so, you know what also the Niners did while you brought it up? They signed another 49ers kid.
I don't know if I saw that one.
Terrell Owens' son out of Missouri State got signed to their practice squad. So they did take a former Niners kid, just not the one that everyone wanted. Yeah.
Anyhow. So my second one also deals with a receiver having nothing to do with his talent, but it just made me chuckle this morning. I got up this morning and I was making my coffee and I started watching ESPN and I saw this press conference for Keon Coleman. And Keon Coleman's
I
got this
love
bright
his-
yellow jacket on and they're talking to him and the joy. Well, first he's messing with the reporters, which I adore. Like he's a 22-year-old receiver, 21-year-old receiver, and he looked like a polished NFL player in the way that he was
Mhm.
answering these questions. But he says, "Yeah, and I got this jacket off the rack, just like my mom taught me. Like I always go at the end of the season to make
Yep.
sure I take
Yep.
care of the deals." And then he looks at the reporter and he says, and this is the part that got me. He's like, "Hey, you can go with me. We'll go together." He's like, "You can get different colors." It was killing me. I loved it. I love that kind of personality. I think you and I have talked about this. Like, it's one thing to be arrogant, it's one thing to be too cocky, it's
Yep.
another thing to just be fun and enjoy that you have that moment as a player coming from college to the NFL. You don't take yourself too seriously. He talks about he's getting it off the rack. I think he might have even said Bloomingdale's or something, or Macy's. But I loved it.
Yeah.
It made me smile this
I
morning.
saw that
So
one too. That
um,
got a lot of play too. A lot
it
of
did.
former reporters talking about covering him and how fun he was and what a treat it's going to
Yes.
be to cover a guy like that. Because apparently he's just fun when he gives comments and quotes. He
Yes.
gives it to you a different way than most people. I will say about Keon Coleman, interesting to see. He fell a little bit too. Originally, if you would have gone in this year,
Yeah.
you probably would have said a first rounder. It was his 40 time that really hurt him. Bottom line
Yeah.
is the guy's a football player.
Yep.
That tenth of a second, I don't think is ultimately going to judge who he is as a receiver.
No way.
I thought he was a pretty good pick, which is why I didn't go with the Bills on my worst list
Yeah.
because I thought actually he was a pretty solid pick.
Well, he's a guy who went from Michigan State to Florida State, correctly?
Yes,
Correct?
he did. Yes.
And
Yep.
and did you see his response when the Bills picked him? Like he jumps off his couch. Like it just I'm of the opinion that some of the ways that they do the draft feel very planned and orchestrated. The joy on his face, both in that press conference and when he found out that Josh Allen's going to be thrown to him, I just love it. It's joyous.
Mhm.
So anyhow, so my next one isn't as joyous and is a little bit negative,
Okay. And he had on a
relatively
low note.
speaking. Yeah, yeah, it's sort of on a low note, but it's also kind of a high note for me because this next one I think
Okay.
is a joke. Every year we hear how the Dallas Cowboys are they're all in. They're going to make this work and they're going to be
Mhm.
great and they're going to take all these picks. And what I'm about to say may not be entirely fair, okay? Because I when you and I talked about some of our favorite offensive linemen, we did bring this name up, or at least I know that I brought this name up. I believe you and I discussed him a little bit. Tyler Guyton is a project. He is a
Yeah.
guy who is a few years out from being a superstar, maybe just two. Maybe he comes in and he's an automatic star, but by all accounts, everything we've heard from him coming out of Oklahoma is that he's going to take some work, right? That there is
Mhm.
some polishing up that'll be done, but that he's going to be a bona fide star at some point in time. But if the Cowboys, they're all in right now. And if they're trying to protect Dak Prescott, and if they're genuinely trying to put a product on the field that is going to compete in the NFC East, then why wouldn't you get someone that's going to help you right now? The last
Mhm.
thing they need is projects.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if it's arrogance on the Cowboys' part that we always have great offensive linemen, so we'll just draft him. He'll walk in the door. He'll be a superstar. We won't have to polish him. We won't even have to worry about it. But I think most people know that that's just not true. And it just it's it constantly comes to this with the Cowboys. And I grew up an Emmett Smith fan. I loved him when he was at Florida. I loved him when he was with the Cowboys. I wasn't necessarily a Cowboys fan, but I just liked there was something about Emmett Smith that he wasn't the dynamic runner that maybe some other backs were, specifically Barry Sanders, but he just got it done. He hit the hole and he was always moving downhill. Now, he benefited from the insane offensive line that we were just talking about or that I just referenced, but um it's
Here's
one of those things with the Cowboys.
here's what
It's
yeah, I'll say
exhausting.
with the Cowboys, they when it comes to D linemen or O linemen, they like to roll the dice and see what they can
Oh yeah,
get. Sometimes they outthink themselves. Times where it's worked. Tyron Smith. Here was a guy that
for
had a
sure.
lot of bad juju in his history. Yet they selected him, and he ended up being a pretty good player, pretty
Yes.
solid. On a different end, roll of the dice where they take a guy, and we're not even talking necessarily about projects. We're talking, just suspect character in some cases. Randy Gregory out of Nebraska, he didn't work out for them.
Right.
There's a reason why he's not on their team anymore, and he's a backup on the 49ers. So they like to sometimes be like, oh, let's take a chance on a guy for whatever reason, whether it's
Right.
his character or whether it's his talent. Long history here. Who was the quarterback? Because I'm blanking on his name and I'm terrible with names. That played ahead of Tom Brady at Michigan for a bit.
Drew Henson.
Drew Henson. They selected Drew Henson too in the NFL draft
Also
at a point.
true.
So they like rolling the dice. Doesn't always work out for them.
Right.
I think it's just Jerry Jones's ego, just thinking that he's the
Yes.
smartest guy on the block, just getting him into trouble. That's
And
where I see it.
the funny thing is, I like the Cooper Beebe pick in the third round. Like that one made sense to me. Like
I like Cooper
there's gotta
Beebe
get
and I
to the
like
second
Maris
level.
Lufau.
And that was my next one. Like their draft overall probably was fine. It was fine. It was kind of middle of the road.
Those
But
two
it
players made it.
I think so too. And
Yeah.
I just don't don't get it. So my wow is for that reason. One of the things I'm just going to toss this out there is like a bonus wow. To your point earlier in our previous video, the Eagles, man, back-to-back corners, man. You have two corners there to go with an already incredible defensive line. That defense is just set up for another decade. It's cool. So
I would say in the last 2 years, the Eagles have won the draft both years in a row.
man,
Collectively,
agreed.
they've had the best draft. They're doing a brilliant job in their front office. I mean, I get people can talk about their quarterback play and the offense and the inconsistencies. They have great players on the field, and they're drafting guys and they're putting them out there and putting them in a position to be successful. The Eagles deserve a lot of kudos because, I mean, those are two monster drafts back-to-back years. Whoa. I agree with you on that one. I thought those were some pretty good wows.
Thank you. Thank you. I did have a sad wow about poor Malik Neighbors having to go play for the Giants, but I'll leave that one alone because I think he'll be just fine. He's a superstar in the making.
Yeah, he'll be great when he plays for another team. Before we go, since I did throw out a wow about an Iowa punter, I'm going to throw out one more little tidbit. I'm going to plant a seed right now. Iowa, you haven't seen him yet, other than maybe a practice. There is another Australian punter from the same exact school that Tory Taylor came from out of Australia. His name is Rise Dakin. He is going to be Iowa's new punter, true freshman. Maybe in 4 years, we'll be talking about Rise the same way that we're talking about Tory Taylor. Maybe these other NCAA schools will take a look at this school and say, okay, obviously they know what they're doing. You could have another Tory Taylor in the making. Unfortunately, he may have to punt just as much as Tory Taylor did. I hope not.
Poor
but
Iowa fans.
yes, we'll have a good defense. We know that much.
Yes.
So on that note, that's the end of our 2024 NFL draft coverage. We'll be coming to you with whatever's out there next, whether it's college, whether it's pro, doesn't matter. We'll be talking about it. Until then, we'll see you next time.